The engine had a sound you don't forget. Not a clean hum, more like a groan. A tired, iron confession from 30-year-old pistons that had been pushed too hard and rested too little. Marcus Cole knew that sound the way a father knows his child's cry. He'd been hearing it for 11 years, ever since he'd dragged the '94 Datsun Bluebird out of a... Marcus was 26 years old. He worked 6 days a week at a shop called Desert Star Auto, which sat between a payday loan office and a tire place on the kind of road that doesn't have trees. He made enough to cover rent in a 2-bedroom apartment he shared with his cousin Dre. Enough for groceries and fuel and not much else. But the Bluebird, that was different. That wasn't a car. That was a plan. Every Saturday night, Marcus drove to the Palmdale Industrial Circuit, a stretch of private tarmac that racers rented by the hour. He didn't race for money yet. He raced for time, timing specifically, shaving seconds, learning the weight of the car, the way it breathed under load, how the rear stepped out at the third corner if he lifted too early. He was getting faster. He knew it. But the engine was getting worse. "She's burning oil, man," his friend Terrell had said 2 weeks ago, peering under the hood with a flashlight. "That head gasket's weeping. You're running on faith and friction." Marcus had pressed his palm flat against the valve cover and felt the heat pulse through it like a heartbeat. Terrell wasn't wrong. The oil was going somewhere it wasn't supposed to go. Carbon was building up inside the combustion chamber. The thermal management, if you could call it that in a car of this vintage, was failing slowly, the way old things fail, not all at once, but in installments. A full engine rebuild would cost somewhere between $2,000 and $4,000. That might as well have been $40,000. He'd priced it out on 3 different sites, spoken to 2 machine shops, and gotten the same answer each time. The number with too many digits. It was a Tuesday night when Marcus found it. He was on his phone at 11:47 p.m., doing the thing he always did when he couldn't sleep, scrolling through obscure automotive forums, reading threads that were 5 years old, looking for something. He wasn't sure what. A miracle, maybe, or at least the mechanical equivalent of one. The thread was buried on a forum called oldirongarage.net, nested in a sub-forum called Desperate Measures and Long Shots. The original post was from a user named CeramicSal69, who had the kind of username that didn't inspire confidence. The post was titled, "I saved my engine with $12 of ceramic coating from a flea market." Here's what happened. Marcus almost kept scrolling, but something, maybe the specificity of the $12, the precision of it, made him stop. The post described a product called ThermaShield Nano Coat. Not a brand you'd find at AutoZone or O'Reilly. Something made by a small manufacturer in eastern Ohio, sold in 2-ounce bottles, distributed through a handful of online suppliers and, apparently, at least one flea market in Bakersfield. The ceramic particles, according to ThermaShield's own product description, bonded to internal metal surfaces under heat, creating a thin thermal barrier that reduced friction, slowed oxidation, and, critically, helped manage the kind of heat buildup that was slowly destroying Marcus's combustion chamber. The reviews on the post were 47 replies deep. Half of them were skeptical. One user wrote, "This is industrial-grade snake oil. You're describing magic." Another replied, "My brother-in-law tried something like this and seized his bottom end." Don't. But 12 replies in, someone named Horace WWV had written something that Marcus read 3 times. "I run a 1988 Celica at the Regional Hill Climb series. The engine was eating itself. Carbon fouling, heat-soaking, the works. Used 2 bottles of this stuff over 4 oil changes. I'm not saying it's science. I'm saying the car ran another 60,000 miles, and I won my class last season. Make of that what you will." Marcus put his phone down. He picked it back up. He searched for a ThermaShield Nano Coat. There were 3 online retailers that stocked it. The first 2 were out. The third, a shop called Hendrick's Specialty Oils out of Columbus, Ohio, with a website that looked like it hadn't been updated since 2009, Had 6 bottles left, $12 each, free shipping on orders over 20. Marcus sat with the checkout screen open for a long time. He told Terrell about it the next day at the shop. Terrell was under a lifted Tahoe, pulling a rusted heat shield, and he laughed hard enough that the trolley jack rattled. $12, Terrell said, not a question. You're going to pour $12 mystery liquid into an engine that already sounds like it's crying. It's ceramic nano coating, Marcus said. It's motor oil with a fancy name and a logo made in Microsoft Paint. Terrell rolled back out, wiped his hands on his shop rag, and gave Marcus the look, the one that said he wasn't being cruel, just honest. Bro, I've seen people dump Lucas. STP, mystery additives, Slick 50, egg whites, actual egg whites, into engines on the edge. You know what saves an engine that's already failing? What? Money? A machine shop? Actual work? Marcus knew he was right. Statistically, probably. In terms of what was documented and peer-reviewed and empirically sound, yes. Terrell was almost certainly right. Most additives were noise. Most miracle products were placebos sold to desperate people. He knew this. He'd fixed enough cars to know that there were no shortcuts, only deferred consequences. But Terrell had money. Not a lot, but enough. Terrell hadn't spent 3 years building something that now sat on the edge of collapse. Terrell's dream didn't have a timing belt and a leaking gasket. That Friday, a small brown package arrived from Columbus, Ohio. 2 bottles, thermal gold label, a blocky sans serif font that read Thermoshield Nanocoat, internal engine ceramic treatment, 2 FL Oz. Marcus held 1 bottle up against the kitchen light. It was slightly amber, slightly viscous, with a faint metallic shimmer that either meant it contained something real or was very good at looking like it did. His phone buzzed. A text from Dre. "That her miracle cure, LOL." Marcus didn't reply. He set the bottles on the kitchen counter next to his keys, his timing notebook, and a photograph of the Bluebird from the day he bought it, muddy and half-dead and full of potential. Tomorrow was Saturday. Tomorrow was the circuit. He would pour it in before the drive. He would run the engine hard and hot. And then he would either have wasted $12 or he would have bought himself something worth a great deal more. He didn't know which. That was the thing about hope. It never came with a guarantee. Marcus did it the way the forum post described, methodically, with the kind of patience he usually reserved for brake bleeds and valve adjustments. Saturday morning, 6:14 a.m. The sky over Palmdale was still the grey-pink of something that hadn't decided to be day yet. He had the Bluebird on the flat concrete pad behind the apartment building, hood up, engine cold. The instructions on the Thermoshield bottle were surprisingly specific. Warm the engine to operating temperature first, let the metal expand, open its grain, then shut it down. Wait 8 minutes, not 5, not 10. The ceramic suspension needed to enter a semi-warm environment, not a hot one, so it could begin bonding to the metal surfaces before the oil fully redistributed. Then, slowly, add the 2-ounce bottle directly to the oil fill, replace the cap, and idle for 20 minutes at no load. Marcus had read the instructions 4 times the night before. He'd also read 3 counter-arguments on the same forum that said the whole process was theatre, that ceramic additives suspended in conventional oil couldn't possibly bond at those temperatures, that the particle size was too large to penetrate micro-surface roughness, that Thermoshield's own spec sheet was deliberately vague about the chemistry. He poured it in anyway. The liquid was thinner than he expected, amber gold with that faint metallic shimmer, and it disappeared into the fill port without ceremony. He replaced the cap, started the engine, set his phone timer for 20 minutes and leaned against the fender with a coffee that had gone cold. At first, nothing. The Bluebird idled the same way it always did, uneven, slightly ragged, the familiar 2-second wobble in the idle speed that he'd never been able to fully tune out. The exhaust note had that low, tired quality. He watched the temperature gauge climb to its normal position and felt the familiar low, grey disappointment of a man who has done something he already suspects won't work. Then, at around the 12-minute mark, something shifted. It was subtle enough that he thought he'd imagined it. The idle smoothed, not dramatically, not like a movie moment, but genuinely smoothed, the way a rough road transitions to new asphalt. The 2-second wobble flattened. The exhaust note dropped half a register. Marcus straightened up and put his hand on the fender, felt the vibration pattern change under his palm, the way you feel a conversation change when someone finally says the true thing. He stood there for the remaining 8 minutes, not moving. The circuit that evening was where it became real. Marcus had a stopwatch app he used for every session, same corner entry markers, same reference points, same consistent methodology. He'd been running the back straight at between 6,200 and 6,400 RPM for the past 3 months, hitting a ceiling he couldn't explain and couldn't break through. The engine simply wouldn't pull past that point cleanly. It would shudder, lose linearity, the power delivery going ragged the way overstressed metal goes ragged. On his second lap that Saturday, he pushed through the ceiling out of habit, and the engine kept pulling. 6,600 RPM, clean, linear, no shudder. He backed off instinctively, convinced something was wrong, came around again, pushed again, 6,800. The sound was different. He'd been driving this engine long enough to know every frequency it produced, and this was a frequency he hadn't heard before. Not strained, not gasping, but extended, confidence, like a voice that had been hoarse for years had finally cleared. Peak RPM before, 6,400. 6,900, 500 RPM lap time, before 143.8, 139.1, 4.7 sec faster oil temp. Before 118 degrees, 104 degrees, 14 degree cooler. His lap time that evening was 1 minute, 39 seconds and 1/10. His previous personal best in this car on this circuit was 143.8. That was not a small gap. That was not a margin of error or a favourable wind or a lucky corner exit. That was 4.5 seconds. An eternity in circuit racing, carved out of a car whose engine was supposed to be dying. He sat in the car after the session with the engine off for a long time. The science of what had happened, the real science, not the forum speculation, was this. The ceramic nanoparticles in the thermoshield coating had, under heat and pressure, begun filling the microsurface irregularities in the cylinder walls, the piston skirts, the camshaft lobes. Metal surfaces that slide against each other are never truly smooth. Under magnification, they look like mountain ranges, full of peaks and valleys that catch and drag and generate heat. The ceramic particles, suspended in the oil carrier and driven into contact zones by pressure, had begun smoothing those ranges. Not eliminating friction, nothing eliminates friction, but reducing it at the molecular level, the way a good glaze reduces roughness in ceramic pottery. Less friction meant less heat. Less heat meant tighter tolerances held longer. Tighter tolerances meant better combustion seal, less blow-by, more of the explosion's energy going to the crankshaft instead of leaking past the rings. The engine wasn't new, but it was, in a measurable and repeatable sense, more efficient than it had been in years. The carbon fouling is still there, Marcus told himself on the drive home, as if he needed to stay skeptical. The head gasket is still weeping. This didn't fix anything. It just bought time. But he was smiling when he said it. And he drove home 6 minutes faster than usual. Word moves the way word moves at small circuits, not through announcements, but through the peripheral vision of people who notice things. Ricky Vargas, who ran a built SR20 in a properly caged Sylvia and had been the fastest regular at Palmdale Industrial for 2 seasons, noticed first. He clocked Marcus's lap on his own timing app from the pit wall and came over afterward with an expression Marcus had never seen on his face before, genuine curiosity. "What did you do to that car?" Ricky said. Not accusatory, just Specific, the way a mechanic asks. Oil treatment, Marcus said. Ricky waited for more. Marcus gave him nothing else. By the following Saturday, there were 3 people who'd asked. By the Saturday after that, Marcus had posted a short video on a forum thread. No face, just gloved hands, the bottle label partially obscured, the sound of the engine before and after edited side by side. He titled it, $12, No Rebuilding, Judge for Yourself. The thread got 400 replies in 72 hours. It also got noticed by someone who worked in regional sales for Motul, a name Marcus recognized from every professional racing paddock he'd ever stood outside of, pressing his nose against the fence. The Motul representative posted 3 times in the thread, each reply progressively less casual. First dismissive, then technical, then, in the 3rd post, asking Marcus to contact him directly via private message. Marcus didn't reply. He also got a direct message from an account associated with a distributor for a German synthetic lubricant brand. The message was polite, professional, and contained one sentence that Marcus read several times. We'd be interested in understanding more about the product you used and whether you've documented the results formally. He was a mechanic who made $41,000 a year, sleeping in a 2-bedroom apartment with his cousin, driving a car that a week ago was supposed to be finished, and large companies with marketing budgets and professional drivers, and sponsored liveries at national events, were sending him messages asking questions they didn't fully want the answers to. Something had changed, not just in the engine. Marcus Cole opened a new document on his phone and began writing everything down. Every RPM figure, every temperature reading, every lap time, every observable change since the first application. If someone was going to tell the story of what ThermoShield had done to a dying engine in a backlot apartment in Palmdale, California, he was going to be the one who told it first, and he was going to tell it with numbers. By the 8th week, Marcus stopped checking the oil every other day. Not because he'd gotten careless. If anything, he'd become more precise, more methodical, logging every detail in the notes app he'd repurposed as a data journal. He stopped checking because there was nothing wrong to find. The oil level held. The color stayed clean longer than it had any right to. The temperature gauge, which had spent 3 years climbing toward the red whenever he pushed hard, now settled at a number so comfortable it looked like a mistake. He had the engine compression tested by a shop whose owner owed him a favor. An old Korean man named Mr. Yun, who ran a perfectly ordered workshop in Lancaster and trusted nothing he couldn't measure. Mr. Yun did the test twice because he didn't believe the first result. Then he printed both readouts and handed them to Marcus without comment, which was the highest compliment Mr. Yun gave anyone. All 4 cylinders were within 2 psi of each other. On a 30-year-old engine that had been burning oil 3 months ago, that number was, as Mr. Yun eventually said after a long silence, not possible in a normal situation. But there it was, documented, printed, signed with a calibration stamp. The ceramic barrier had done something that conventional engine logic said required either a full rebuild or the passage of time running backwards. The microsurface contact zones, cylinder walls, piston rings, valve stems, cam lobes, had been smoothed to tolerances that new engines spent their first 10,000 miles trying to reach through the natural process of break-in. ThermoShield had accelerated that process and then frozen it. The metal surfaces weren't wearing anymore. They were maintaining, like a joint protected by cartilage that had somehow regenerated. Wear and tear is not a law, Marcus wrote in his journal one night. It's the default. Defaults can be changed. The heat was the most remarkable part. Under hard acceleration on the back straight, sustained high RPM load, the kind of running that used to push his oil temperature to 118 degrees Celsius. The gauge now held at 101, 17 degrees of thermal reduction. Not through a bigger oil cooler, not through revised coolant routing, not through any modification he could point to and explain. Through a 2-ounce bottle of ceramic suspension that cost less than a fast food meal. He ran the engine for another 6,000 miles over the next 3 months. The compression numbers didn't change. The oil consumption didn't return. The Bluebird, which had been scheduled by the logic of entropy for its terminal decline, was running the best laps of its life. The Motul representative's name was Derek Foss. He was 34, based out of a regional office in Irvine, and he called Marcus on a Thursday afternoon in a tone that had been carefully positioned somewhere between friendly and official. "We've been following your thread," Derek said, "and some of the forum documentation. We're not here to cause any problems. We just think there might be an interesting conversation to have." Marcus was under a Camry at Desert Star at the time, phone on speaker on the concrete beside him. "What kind of conversation?" he said. "The kind where we understand what you used, how you used it, and, frankly, whether the results you're claiming are reproducible in a controlled setting." Marcus thought about that. "You want to test it." "We want to understand it," Derek said, which was not the same thing, and Marcus recognized the difference. 3 days later, a different call came, this one from a law firm in Los Angeles, representing a holding company that Marcus had to look up to identify. The holding company, it turned out, was a parent entity for 2 synthetic oil brands and a fuel additive manufacturer whose combined annual revenue was north of $400 million. The lawyer's message was precise and brief. The company had concerns about certain claims being made in online forums regarding a competing product, and they were conducting a preliminary review of the documentation being circulated. Marcus forwarded the lawyer's voicemail to Terrell, who listened to it twice, and then called back immediately. "Bro," Terrell said, "a $400 million company just called you about your $12 bottle." Their lawyers called. "Same thing. Marcus, do you understand what that means?" Marcus understood exactly what it meant. It meant the numbers were real enough to be a threat. You don't send lawyers after something that doesn't matter. You don't have a regional sales rep call a mechanic in Palmdale because you're curious. These were not the actions of companies that felt secure. These were the actions of companies that had done the math and didn't like the answer. The forum thread, meanwhile, had been replicated across 4 other platforms. Independent mechanics in Ohio, Texas, the UK, and the Philippines had sourced ThermoShield through the Columbus distributor and begun their own tests. The results were not identical. Nothing in engine work ever is, but the pattern was consistent. Enough that a mechanical engineering graduate student at Cal Poly had begun a formal study, requesting documented data from forum participants. Hendrick's Specialty Oils, the 9-employee company in Columbus that had 6 bottles of ThermoShield left when Marcus first ordered, was now shipping internationally. They had a 3-week backlog. Week 1, 1 mechanic, 1 dying engine, 1 forum post titled $12. No rebuilding, judge for yourself. Week 4, 400 forum replies. Independent tests launched across 3 continents. Week 8, a 400-meter holding company sends lawyers. A graduate student begins formal documentation. Week 12, Hendrick's Specialty Oils ships internationally. 3-week backlog. 9 employees became 30. Week 16, Cal Poly study submitted to peer review. Science can no longer be ignored. The offer arrived on a Tuesday. Formal, typed on letterhead, sent via email and physical courier simultaneously, which told Marcus everything about how seriously it was being taken. A major automotive aftermarket corporation, the kind whose products sit on end caps at every auto parts chain in America, was offering to acquire exclusive licensing rights to ThermoShield's formula and distribution. The offer included a number with 6 figures, directed not at Marcus but at Hendrick's Specialty Oils, and a separate consulting arrangement offered to Marcus himself for an amount that represented more than 3 years of his current salary. The condition was simple: exclusivity. The formula goes behind a corporate wall. Distribution gets optimized. The product gets rebranded, repriced, and placed inside a premium product tier. No more $12 bottles on obscure Ohio websites. No more forum threads. No more ceramic Sal 69 passing it on to broke mechanics at midnight. Marcus read the offer in the parking lot of Desert Star during his lunch break, sitting on the hood of someone else's car, eating a sandwich he didn't taste. He thought about the $12. He thought about the forum. He thought about Horace W.V. and his 1988 Celica and 60,000 more miles on an engine nobody believed in. He thought about the mechanic in the Philippines who'd messaged him last week, a man named Rodrigo, who fixed tricycles and jeepneys and couldn't afford the rebuild costs that his customers needed, and who had sourced 2 bottles of ThermoShield and reported back with the careful precision of someone for whom the results genuinely changed the economics of his livelihood. He called the owner of Hendricks Specialty Oils, a 61-year-old man named Gary Hendricks, who had started the company in his garage and still answered his own phone. Marcus had spoken to Gary twice before, brief calls about order logistics. This time the call lasted 40 minutes. "What do you want to do, Gary?" Marcus asked near the end. There was a pause. "I want to keep making it," Gary said. "I want people to be able to buy it." "Then don't sell." Another pause, longer. "They'll make it difficult." "They already made it difficult," Marcus said. "That's how you know it's working." Gary Hendricks declined the acquisition offer the following Monday. He posted the decline letter, with the acquiring company's name redacted, in the oldirongarage.net thread. It was the most read post in the forum's history. Marcus kept the Bluebird. He kept racing at Palmdale Industrial on Saturday nights. His lap times kept dropping. He never did reply to Derek Foss at Mottle, or to the law firm in Los Angeles, or to the consulting arrangement with the 6-figure number attached to it. He posted his full data set, every compression reading, every temperature log, every lap time from before and after, as a free, downloadable document pinned to the top of the forum thread. He titled it simply, "For Anyone Who Can't Afford the Rebuild." By the end of the year, the Cal Poly study was accepted for peer review. 3 independent workshops in Germany, Japan, and Brazil had begun distributing ThermoShield locally. A small engine manufacturer in Vietnam had begun exploring ceramic pre-treatment in production. None of this happened because of a corporation or a campaign or a press release. It happened because one man with $41,000 a year and a dying engine posted his results honestly, and the results were true. The Bluebird's engine, as of the last entry in Marcus Cole's data journal, had covered 94,000 miles since the first application. The compression numbers had not changed. The oil temperature had not changed. The engine, by every measurable standard available to a mechanic working alone in a parking lot in Palmdale, California, showed no signs of stopping.